Hey, everybody, welcome back to Historical Light. We have an excellent episode lined up for you tonight. It's been a while. We've been tied up with a bunch of other things, but stoked to be back in the studio tonight. We're talking Masonic history. More so, we're talking Virginia Masonic history. We have with us tonight, Brother Matthew Maggy from Virginia, going to be telling us all about his lodge history, their foundation, all the cool stuff they've been doing. So stick with us. We have an excellent episode lined up for you right after this on Historical Light.
Welcome back to the Historical Light Masonic Podcast, dedicated to illuminate our past and bring our Masonic history to light since 2016. And now, enjoy the show.
Hey, what's going on, Brother Matthew? How you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. How about yourself, Brother Powers?
Man, it's been crazy, and I'm stoked that you reached out and kind of gave a nudge because it's been a hot minute since we've done a episode of Historical Light. Stoked to get back into the booth, and all the stuff you were talking about on Messenger when we were chatting sounded right down the alley. So really, really excited to dive in and hear all the cool stuff that you guys are doing. To get started, man, I'd love to know a little bit more about you. For anyone that may not know who you are, if you let us know, who are you? What's your role in Masonry today?
My name's Matthew Maggy. I'm the current Worshipful Master of Richmond-Randolph, Lodge number 19 in Richmond, Virginia. We meet in Mason's Hall. Our lodge has been meeting there since 1787, 238 years in the same building. Wow. It's been in the same place. Walking into it, honestly, it's pretty humbling. I affiliated with the lodge in 2016. It was like secretary for 4 years, and then I got into line, which it's a pretty good way to understand how the lodge works. And I became the unofficial docent because I used to run a tour business in Richmond as my side hustle. Always loved history, and so I brought that to tour guiding and showing off Mason's Hall.
That's fantastic, man. And, you know, it's weird that guys like you and me get tied into Freemasonry when we love history. There's just not much history to talk about here, is there?
No, not a lot. I only came to it through, watching the History Channel. And
there you go. It's always fascinating. And it never surprises me. Well, it never ceases to surprise me, I should say. Talking to so many guys from throughout Kansas, throughout the United States, they just don't see the significance with their local lodge. They see, through the movies, through the History Channel, et cetera, there's certain lodges that have this amazing history, but their personal lodge, there's nothing really there to talk about. When you take the time to dive in, I mean, with half these lodges, we're talking about some of the earliest settlers to these communities, some of the most prominent individuals, first doctors, first politicians, lawmakers, all this stuff throughout our nation. There's so many golden nuggets there to uncover and connect the dots with if you just take the time to really look beneath, the cover or between the lines.
Yeah, well, with our lodge and our building being so old, it was built in 1785. We've kind of got a lot of that history that's been written before. I mean, you look at like the minutes book from 1906, and they're referring to it as ancient. And so we've got stories with John Marshall, Edmund Randolph, who helped build it, all over. And as we continue to go into the building, look into old minutes, we find a lot of nuggets that we might not have otherwise known. We always know the building was built 1785 through the use of a lottery. It was the brainchild of Edmund Randolph, who laid the cornerstone at the Capitol in Virginia. He was a Mason, and the early part of the city was sort of like a who's who of who is Richmond and ran Richmond, merchants and lawyers, statesmen, and the Common Council. But in what we're discovering now, we always knew that, but what we're discovering now is a lot of these individual names and the stories behind those names that people haven't actually heard. And so that's sort of where we've been gearing a lot of what we're doing recently as far as reaching out to the historic community. And you got like Solomon Jacobs, who was the Rothschild Bank agent in Richmond, first Jewish Grand Master of Masons in Virginia. He's an important guy in the city in Virginia Masonry. Most
Right.
people don't know about him. We have a portrait of him hanging in our lodge room. Edmund-Randolph, the first Attorney General of the United States, the guy who presented the plan of the Constitution at the Constitutional Convention. You don't hear about him at all. And so we have a chance to tell that story and lots of other stories that, you don't really have with any other building contained within it.
Right. I love it, man. I'm stoked to dive in tonight. I want to prod everyone out there listening. Go back to your lodge after listening to this tonight and find something. There's a nugget there, and then share it with us. And here's the other amazing thing. So many of our lodges have written history books, have done videos, all this stuff, throughout the years, and it gets forgotten. And then we have to rediscover the history. There's stuff there that's really, really cool. Go dig in and bring that memory back to life. Before we dive in tonight, I got to jump real quick and give props. We have MasonicCon Kansas coming up real fast on us. We're like 60 days out, maybe just under 60 days out. I'd have to do the math there. July 19th is the big day. July 18th, we'll have the festive board. We've kind of switched that around, and we've switched the entire, makeup of this event. So before, we've always sold tickets to the event itself, if you want to view it virtually and if you want to come to the festive board. This year, the only thing we're selling tickets to is the festive board itself because of catering and all that jazz. We've revamped. If you want to attend in free or in person, completely free. If you want to attend virtually, completely free. What we've done is we've switched everything over to a nonprofit organization. We've got accepted and approved as a 501c3. And we've revamped so that now MasonicCon Kansas, that 1 weekend a year, is not just all this event is, it's our fundraiser. So from that, we're encouraging donations, etc. And what that is going towards is preserving and promoting our public-facing Masonic history throughout our jurisdiction. Did a couple lives this morning out at several cemeteries. Just a quick gist of it. There was one out in Overland Park, Kansas. Huge, prominent cemetery. Very, very lovely. Back in the day, there used to be an outdoor lodge room there. It was removed because of disrepair. There's another one in Kansas City, Kansas that is still there, but is in disrepair. And we're seeing these all across the jurisdiction. So that's what we're starting off with MasonicCon Kansas. We're going to take that money that we raise and we're going to rehab and promote those public-facing Masonic historical artifacts that we see throughout our state. For one, so it's there for years to come. For two, so that when the public sees Masonic artifacts, they're not always crumbling. Every time they see so many of our buildings, so many of our monuments, they're always in disrepair and crumbling. That becomes the face that they know of Masonry, and we want to change that. So check us out, MasonicConKansas.com. If you can make it in the area, we would love to see you in person. If not, get a virtual ticket and join in. It's going to be a long day of epic education and a solid effort behind it to bring Masonry to a new light. So we hope we see you guys there. All right, man. I'm ready for some history.
Always ready. Always ready.
Well, let's start off and get to know you just a little bit better if we can, man. What brought you to Freemasonry in the very first place? Do you have family history here, or what was it that got you in the sights of Masonry?
No family history. I'm probably like a lot of people. I became a Mason when I was 23 in 2010 back in Reno, Nevada. I think most people around that time, that was when, all the History Channel was talking about George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and the secrets of the Masons. And I really liked those guys. And so I wanted to be a Mason and became a Mason. Kind of dove deeper into it as time went on. I don't really know. I was actually kind of dormant when I moved out to Virginia. It really took me a long time to find a lodge that I clicked with. But man, I walked in, downtown Richmond. Our lodge, we have philosophy nights. Our meetings contain philosophy discussions. It's generally like I'm probably more the average age of the active member. So it's also like my social group. And so that's how I brought to Masonry. And then the building's really cool. And I get to be a part of this is one of the reasons I initially visited was actually I had never been there. And then I worked for a general contractor that worked on historic buildings. And they were starting to do a historic structures report. And they found this crumbling beam in the attic, the thing's timber framed.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I kind of started getting to know the guys. I was like, oh, I should attend this lodge. And I showed up and I was like blown away by just the good stuff that the lodge is doing, social events and whatnot. So, I became a Mason in 2010, but really 2016 is when I got sucked in and was completely sold on, this thing we call Freemasonry for a myriad of reasons.
I love that, man. Just out of curiosity, 2010, you didn't have family history. You didn't really have a connection to the Masons. How did you bridge that gap? How did you reach out to inquire about becoming a member?
Well, I was trying to get someone who I was interning with at the Nevada State Legislature. Studied political science, even though I'm not in politics. And he was like, oh, he was trying to recruit him. I was trying to come get him to rush for my fraternity, Phi Delta Theta, in college, right? And he was like, well, I'm already involved in fraternal organizations. I'm like, what, the Freemasons? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh. And then my buddy Greg Ross, who's a Mason down in North Carolina now, we actually went through our degrees together back in Reno, was like, oh, the Freemasons. I've read Aleister Crowley. I've read, all these guys, and that's super cool. So he was like way more into it than I was, but I thought, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'll join Masonry, Washington, Franklin. Yeah.
Well, not to dwell entirely off track here, but I'm just curious. So for our grand jurisdiction here, we've been running like just general awareness campaigns and stuff on social media. And I posted something about MasonicCon on my LinkedIn, which I was hesitant to, but kind of worked out with my business efforts, etc. Immediately on the LinkedIn post, I got my ass chewed by some random guy in my network, just anti-Masonic conspiracy theory craziness. Mm-hmm. And we get it nonstop on the awareness campaigns too. Be the most humbling, good nature post and just get destroyed by all these people in the public that have this crazy misconception of Freemasonry. To those people out there that may be tuning in, what do you have to say?
I mean, all you have to really do is just meet some Freemasons. I mean, we're all pretty good people. If you're behind the computer, you're never actually seeing anyone. I mean, if you read any of our rituals all out on the internet, right? Like, if you read through any of it, there's nothing about it that says, hey, we're evil or involved in some conspiracy. But, there's just some people are looking for some out for whatever issues they have. And we're kind of an easy target because of, various conspiracy theories that are already out there and that have been out there since before the internet.
Dead right, man.
I would tell them, just come to one of our breakfasts or, come to our First Fridays events or come to, Rosie O'Connelly's after our ritual practice one night and, talk to us. I know a lot of 33rd degree Masons. They're all really good people. I don't think they're involved in anything nefarious.
Right. And that's always the number one thing. Is like I'm reading through this stuff and I'm like, you forget that we're just guys, right? Like I just live down the street like you. I work at the same place as you. We're not, some alien creature. We're just men that belong to a fraternity. Movies and everything else.
I could see how people, with our lodge, like, for example, I was mentioning a lot of the members of the lodge initially when Mason's Hall was built were like 2/3 of them were members of the Common Council in the city. So I could see how, people might see that, hey, all these guys, they go to these meetings and they also run the city's politics and finances. That's a little weird or a little funny. So I could see where people might in their mind come up with stuff, but you do business with people you trust and you trust other Masons.
Yep. Fair enough. All right, man, let's talk about it. Now, I think an easy segue here. I want to make sure to highlight this because you guys had a fairly big event today, correct?
Yeah, we had an event today. We had it's called Randolph Marshall Day. It was meant to be, have a new, this new foundation, the 501c3, and this was meant to be our big event to introduce the larger historical community in Richmond and Virginia to our story as, a lot of the men who are here were the ones who built the city when it became Virginia's capital in 1780. So that was the big event that John Rourke. So that was the point, was to help tie in the historic community. And we had a presentation on Edmond-Randolph by the Grand Senior Warden, Gino Williams, who's a judge down in Floyd County. And so, we do open houses. We have open houses and people come. Sometimes we actually, have members come from the open houses. And that's one of the nice things about our historic building. Has a lot of upkeep costs, but it's also really cool. So it brings people in, just off the street, and then they find out about masonry. And we're like, oh, so we actually get a lot of people to our open houses, more so to share the story, but also, a lot of them are curious about masonry. So that's also part of what this event today was. But it went really well. We had a decent turnout.
That's fantastic, man. I love everything about that, the way you guys put that up, and especially the fact that it gets the public, in there to see what's going on and to appreciate the history within. I think that's fantastic. So let's dive in. Let's talk about history of your lodge and the archival and everything you guys are doing, because when we were chatting, you were talking some amazing stuff that's right down my alley.
Oh yeah. So, we've got the standard history of the lodge. I mentioned the lottery and through the years and whatnot, preservation efforts. I went through, actually inspired by your podcast, and I was trying to find certain bits of information. So, I'm in charge, because I'm in construction. I end up managing a lot of the construction projects on the building. And I was trying to find, I knew there were periods where we've done large renovations, right? And so I wanted to find out what those were, because that's important. We're trying to get this historic structures report done, which is, kind of guides what you do from now on. But I was trying to lay a lot of the groundwork for that by finding previous stuff. So I started opening the books to just find out, okay, let me know more about the lottery. Okay, we got taken to court because they didn't pay the bill and a bunch of brothers fronted the money. Did they ever get paid back? What happened with that? So I started looking through the minutes, and our minutes are held at the Grand Lodge of Virginia Museum and Library. So they're kept in really good condition. A lot of lodges have minutes that have not been kept in their dank basements on a floodplain like our building is in, and they haven't survived great. In fact, if one of our older minutes book was rebound. So I was down there looking for that, and I was like, well, while I'm here, I might as well just snap a bunch of pictures with my cell phone. I heard that's one of the things that you said to get started. I was like, I might as well just do that. And so before you know it, I had our first minutes book digitized. I have Bluebeam at work, so I brought it home and turned it into a PDF in a Bluebeam. And then from after, it was actually a year and a half later, I was like, oh, there was always this story that, like, during the Civil War, Richmond was the capital of the Confederacy during the American Civil War. So there's always a story that Union officers from the prison down the way would come to Mason's Hall just like while they were prisoners during the war. And I was like, I haven't seen a ton of stuff that actually verifies that. So, so I was looking for that in the minutes from the Civil War era. So I was like, well, while I'm here, I might as well digitize this book. And one of the things was, like, all of the, during the evacuation of Richmond, the minutes pages are all faded and almost completely blank. And I thought, whoa, that's interesting. And so I had a construction project that was down near the Grand Lodge of Virginia and the Grand Lodge Library. So I figured I can go down here, once a week, every couple of weeks, do a whole nother minutes book. So I did that. And, I found, so, like, I was going through, maybe you've had this experience digitizing stuff. So I was going through trying to find these lists of projects that had been done. And there was, like, a newspaper article that said some, and I couldn't really find a definitive list of every, major repair. And then I happened upon this long list of repairs that were made in 1906.
Okay.
And this one thing, this is like the most fascinating thing I found. It's just not what I was what I was expecting to find in these minutes. And so I was like, oh, it's a big renovation. And I kind of flipped back and was like, oh, there was a fire in the barn behind us. And, oh, the secretary at the time kept really thorough minutes of the discussions, of the debates that went on. Should we save the building? Should we take the insurance money and sell it off? And, they ended up borrowing the money from a member of the lodge. It was like $76,000 in today's dollars. And so I just found this whole, I won't get into the whole rabbit hole right now for the sake of time, but I just found this whole rabbit hole, this really interesting, awesome story that has literally never been told, or no one really knew about. And tied to that, we have these pictures, these 3 pictures of the lodge room, the Royal Arch chapter room. We actually have a dedicated Royal Arch chapter room. You know, you don't have to haul out the columns and veils every time you want to do a meeting there.
Right.
The Royal Arch chapter was founded there in 1792. But anyway, so we have these pictures, and they were taken. These are the only pictures we have pre-fire, and they were taken like 6 weeks before this fire. And, you know, so like they said, oh, we have this bill for taking these photos. And I was like, oh my gosh, how timely is that? You know, but they had to redo the lodge room and the chapter room. And then later I found, you know how every lodge has the George Washington portrait?
Yeah.
I guess it was a fundraiser for the Washington Masonic Memorial. So, you know, then I found, oh, we got this in 1907 while we're trying to figure out how to pay for all this work that we had to do to the lodge. And then they sent this portrait saying, hey, here's this portrait of George Washington. Give us some money for it towards the memorial. And it was pretty bad timing. So we gave them, are you past master?
Yeah.
So, okay. So what's like the standard Masonic donation when someone like asks you for money? $50?
Yeah.
$100. Yeah. So it was like $2 we gave towards the memorial. Yeah. It's like, hey, yeah, here's all we could come up with. But yeah, I mean, that's honestly one of the coolest things I found. And I found other stuff through the minutes, but we have them. So we've got this guy, Donald Tracer, who's written like a couple lodge histories for lodges he's involved with. And he'll randomly, and he's working on this project of all the cornerstones in Richmond laid by Masonic lodges. And he'll randomly ask me, hey, I got this thing about this cornerstone. I can't find it. Do you have any record of that? And I'm like, oh yeah. And I'll just whip open my Google Drive and my digitized minutes to find it and chop it out and give it to him. Yeah, we have this mystery portrait that's been hanging in our lodge of some guy that's in black and white with no name on it. I figured out who it was. Some guy named A.B. Crowell.
I love that. The amazing thing about this and how small of a world it is, I'm listening to all these stories, and we've done other, episodes that align with this, but it's also just pinging my memory of my own situation. And it's almost like you go to every lodge and there's so many of the same situations that happen to all of us.
Yeah.
We had that saying, like, unfortunate, but pretty much every lodge has like a famous tornado or fire or flood story of some nature. It sucks. I don't know why Masonry has been a magnet towards that, but same type of deal. We had 2 burnt up images on the wall, which we actually thought were sun faded for the longest time until we actually took them down and noticed, no, these are charred to a crisp. But beyond that, we had that same portrait in our lodge room forever. And the amazing thing about this, it's like a rounded frame. So it's like
ours is a rounded frame too.
Following you, the eyes are there. The weird thing about the portrait is they did the face in such a way, I swear to God, every time you go in the lodge room, he's in a different expression. Sometimes he looks pissed, sometimes he looks happy, sometimes he's just indifferent. But nobody could tell me who the heck this was. And then finally we found out it was one of the past masters lodge, William McClintock. And an amazing history of there, but it's fascinating diving into this and just seeing how many similarities of these natures we find between the lodges.
Yeah. What was the other thing? Yeah, well, we have a similar portrait that followed where the eyes follow you. It's John Marshall and his Masonic regalia. The Chief Justice.
Love that. So you talked about some renovations through the years. Obviously, a very old building. One amazing thing I find in lodges, and like you're talking with the cornerstones and all that. Our Grand Lodge has some tracking, but there's so much, like we were talking about the cemeteries this morning. There's so much the Grand Lodge just didn't track over the years. We don't know that, half the stuff that's out there or that used to be out there that's not anymore. But beyond that, we forget, and we talked about this earlier, that stuff has been discovered and been promoted, but then been forgotten. And if we don't take those efforts in today's world to highlight those, bring them back to light, they're gone forever. And it's amazing how many times you go into your own lodge that maybe you go in 2-3 times a week, or at least monthly, whatever, and you know everything in this lodge. But then one day you look on the bookshelf that you've passed 10,000 times and you notice something there that, oh my God, I've never seen that before. It happens to all of us. I'm curious, during these renovations and everything, did you guys find anything that was maybe unknown?
Yeah. I mean, can I share?
Yeah.
The photo?
Bottom of the screen, you should have kind of a box with an up arrow to share screen.
Yeah, I don't know how to do this without revealing my entire desktop. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Make sure you.
And plus, people are listening, so I don't want to make them listen to this. But so what happened was we had this failing beam in the Blue Lodge room, and it was. I mean, so the building is timber framed, and so I don't know if you know much about construction. We had this cracked beam in the lodge room, and we ended up getting it having steel channel. Like we have I don't know if you can see behind me. I guess not. We had the steel channel to sandwich the beam. Thanks to the Historic Richmond and the Matthew and Genevieve Mezzanotte Foundation who funded that. It was very expensive. So we had to do some selective demolition to make sure that the structure could take the weight of these 1,500 pounds of steel beam. So we have this the junior warden station that has this built up platform and it goes across it. And so they took up some of the floor there, and I'm looking and I'm like, oh, this is gold. I'm going to stick my flashlight and camera down there and see if there's anything in there. And they showed up. I mean, let's look them over sound. So it showed up this wallpaper. Is the screen sharing?
No. Once you click go,
there we go.
Pop up the screen for me to activate. Not seeing anything just yet.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So it turned up this wallpaper that's just like hidden behind the junior warden station, and so there's the junior warden station, and you can see we've got wainscoting around it now, and the whole platform between two of the fireplaces there, I assume to conceal a gas line because they added gas in 1870. They pulled it up and they just pulled up this wallpaper, and I showed this to people and everyone's amazed. So if that was done in 1870 when they expanded the station, this wallpaper is probably from like the 1840s, judging by how often they could actually afford to redo stuff in the building.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, the minutes are littered with like, oh, we got to do this stuff and we can't afford to pay for it.
That blows me away. I haven't seen the inside of your lodge. You're flipping through some of those pictures.
Yeah. I can give you the virtual tour. I just didn't know how to
fireplaces. That's awesome.
Yeah, but yeah. So we've got the two fireplaces, and if I put some slides together, we've got like all these old photos. The whole world's changed around the building. Even though our facade changed, we've widened the windows. We have a pediment and a porch that weren't there till 1870. And we did a paint analysis, and it turned out that the siding was replaced like in 1901, 1902. We got a concrete floor in the basement that was there in 1931, and the checkerboard, mosaic pavement that was put in there in 1970. We've got the chapter room that's original. This is the old. There's an old photo from before it had to be redone after the fire. So there's just
3 stories. I see that lower kind of a main floor and then an up top.
Yeah. So we've got the sort of the basement. It's our dining room where we do our lodge meetings. Right now, this is from today where it was set up for the presentations for Randolph Marshall Day. You go up second floor, it's the chapter room, Royal Arch. That is a candidate preparation room.
We're still looking at kind of an aerial view, looking down on the building itself.
Oh, so I'm flipping through images and not
seeing
them.
There
we go. All right, here we go. All right, so there we go. Okay, Mason's Hall throughout the years. We'll just edit that in post. So you can see it's like we've got buildings next to it that are demolished and a new one constructed.
Wow.
This is our the foyer. So that's flooring was put there in 1970. The slab below it in 1931. We've got a kitchen and a bathroom, which obviously wouldn't have originally been there. We've got this is the chapter room. You don't have to go set up all your columns all the time. Transform the lodge room into Royal Arch room. It's just there. There's the older pictures from it. I'll just click through. I won't go through and describing all the pictures. But yeah, so that's the second floor landing. One of the big things, the fun things that we did there was the Marquis de Lafayette visited there. Here's our lodge room, junior warden station.
Stunning.
The Marquis de Lafayette, visited there. This is actually the only picture I could find of like the master station in the east, and we have an old Tyler sword back there. Call it the Sword of Damocles over the Worshipful Master. So one of the big, this is before the fire. So, the ceiling's different. You can't really see it there. And so like we had this, one of the things is the Marquis de Lafayette, which is probably 200th anniversary of his tour of the United States, which you probably might have heard of. If, you're in Masonry, maybe Chris Rowley's book or heard him interviewed or read his book. So one of the places he came was Mason's Hall. And, he was made an honorary member of the lodge. We actually have his signature on our minutes because when he became an honorary member, you had to, you signed the bylaws. And what's really funny is if you look over here, if you're on the right, there's all these writing and signatures of people, and they are not from 1824. There's a Grotto, whatever the grand guy from the Grotto is, in 1928. They had a convention in Richmond, and he wrote his signature in a message next to the Lafayette signing page in this old minutes book.
Wow.
Yeah, so we got my member of our lodge of past master is really into the Grotto Chandos, and I sent that to him, and he thought it was hilarious.
Wow.
But yeah, so it was really crazy. So Alan E. Roberts wrote, if you guys know who he is, he wrote a play about the visit to Lafayette, reenacting the toasts, and so it was. So we actually did the reenactment on the day they had it. The toasts are non-alcoholic because Virginia, and but yeah, it was a really good event. That was one of our public events. We all dressed up. We did a reading of the play, and that's the sort of thing that not a lot of lodges can say that's the original thing that happened in the building. With actual evidence from newspaper articles that this is what happened in the same place it happened. And I don't know many people who are doing stuff for the bicentennial of Lafayette who could do that. You're talking about digging through history. We actually did a privy dig. This is what this picture is of. One of our brothers who's who's an antiquarian, knows a lot of this stuff. We dug up the privy, the only one that we could still access from 1880s or 1890s, and found all this glorious Masonic trash.
That is now that's outside the building, right?
Yep. That we have this weird double door in the corner of the basement room that leads out to the privy. And these buildings have all, look back at the old photos, these buildings weren't here behind in this wall on the side of us originally. So we haven't sifted through any founding father feces yet, but one day when all the other buildings around us fall and we're still standing, we'll be there ready to dig up the privy.
Gotta highlight John Ruark there. I'm gonna sign the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, I was like, what? Right. Well, here's the other thing. We have a big, nice, giant safe that these minutes are kept in, and let me stop the screen share. Am I still screen sharing?
No, you're off.
So we have this big safe where we keep all our minutes in, and I don't know what member of the lodge, while the Grotto convention was in town, just whipped out the Lafayette. Hey, you guys want to see something cool? It's like, dude, I'm going to sign it. I'm just like, how did he let that happen?
That's wild. That's wild, man. I want to highlight those. So you were talking about the privy dig there, and for anyone that's not, I guess tuned to what that, not privy to it. Perfect, love it. So back in the day, obviously we'd have outhouses and such, and it was just kind of a common happening. Old medicine bottles and so forth would just get tossed in the outhouse. Over years, those get moved, locations, whatever, filled in. It sounds gross, but this many years in the future, it's all just dirt. But I've got some good friends that I've met through Facebook that do that around Kansas, going through the Flint Hills and stuff where they know outhouses used to be, and dig that up. And you find some just incredible artifacts. That is the first one that I've seen done at a Masonic temple, which I think is fascinating. I've always kind of wondered about that. But that's just fascinating. Really, really is.
Well, most lodge buildings don't predate indoor plumbing. So I guess that would be why.
That's fair. Our lodge in Gardner out here did, but I have no idea where that would be located. I mean, location wise. So now it's like we're just outside of Kansas City, but it's kind of a small town vibe over here, and it's all filled up with buildings on all the side now. Mm-hmm. So wherever that was would probably be smack underneath one of it. We'll just have to tear them down. It's worth it.
Well, our brother who did the privy dig, who did the dig, was like big into metal detecting and knows how to locate this stuff, and so he located it all. I don't know how. I wasn't there. It was like really rainy that day too, but he was like super busy with work and family, and he was like, "I set this date. I'm doing this." So him and another brother went out there and dug up the feces and found the treasure.
No, that is really cool. I've always thought about that, and that's the first time I've seen an old Masonic temple do that. So kudos to you guys, really digging up history.
I like it. Yeah, we find all sorts of random stuff as we go. The big historic story that we have, that's our big tie, is we have this Civil War Union officer sword that's in our lodge, and I guess when I don't want to know how deep into the history of Richmond, but so when the Confederates left the Capitol, they torched all the warehouses with tobacco and gunpowder by the river, and there was like rioting and looting. And so when the Union came in, the general who came in was a Mason. Some of the older Masons from the lodge went and said, "Hey, you guys, our lodge was the Grand Lodge building until from when it was built until 1875 or thereabouts. So it's good. You got to station sentries around this building." So they protected 3 buildings: Robert E. Lee's wife's house, because she was indigent, and that's probably a big target for looting. The state capitol, just built in 1788, and Mason's Hall. And so during the United States military government of Virginia, right after the war, officers would come, and visit the lodge. And I guess one guy left his sword there, either intentionally as a token of friendship and brotherly love. That is, as far as artifacts go that we have in the lodge, that is the main event.
Wow. That's fantastic, man. Now, one thing you touched on that I can't let slip, because it's near and dear to me, is the digitization aspect. Now, you said you got started going down the basement with just your phone and snapping those pictures, and that is epic. I started out that same way. It's painstaking, but when you don't have other equipment available, for God's sake, do it. We've had that argument 10,000 times of, oh, well, it's not good enough. Look, get it now before something happens. We never know when that fire is going to happen. We never know when that ink is simply going to disappear from the page. You were talking about that. Open it up and just, barely able to read words. We've seen that time and time again with the old hand mixed ink. One meeting's totally legible. The next one, they mixed a little water in there just to make it work. And yeah, that stuff's like disappearing from the page. Over time, did you guys switch to any other methods besides using the phone, or where are you guys at with digitization today?
Some like the newer minutes that weren't digital from like the 90s and 2000s, I scanned. So in our building, so we own our minutes up till 1956 are at the Grand Lodge of Virginia Museum and Library.
Okay.
And which is great, but the problem is they're only open Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Yeah,
So if I have equipment, I guess I could haul it down there, but it was just something I kind of did at lunchtimes after owner meetings at my job site, which is near the Grand Lodge building. And
Right
now I've learned of actually Adobe Scan would have been a way better thing to use, because mine was just taking images, and I found
Sure.
Adobe Scan after I got the typewritten minutes. So you almost don't even need it at that point. You could just use OCR, optical character recognition, on that. But the problem is with my phone, some of the stuff's a little blurry. I've had to do some retakes, and I need to go do some more retakes. But that's, I'd say 95 to 96% of what I have is useful and legible, and and then maybe 1% you can't read, but most of it is there. And so for now, because I got small children, full-time job, master of a lodge, head of this foundation, now I don't really have time to go back and take all the photos, but I'm still pull them up.
Masonry teaches masonry first, and don't worry about anything else, right? Time management.
Yeah. Lodge, family, job.
48 hours in every day. Just get it done and shut up. No.
Yeah. I forget the 24-inch gauge. It's not an important lesson.
Tape a few of them together. It's the only way to go by. So I started off the exact same way. To throw in a minor plug here for Kansas Lodge Research, especially today, you can't knock the quality of modern cell phones. The imagery is fantastic. I don't know why my chair is losing its height. If I can find the button around here. There we go. All right. So modern phone, the imagery is great. So you can nail those immediately, and especially in an instance versus potentially losing that, like, get those images. There's so many other options out there now of convenience. So Kansas Lodge Research, over time, what we ended up doing is building archival kits, because we ship these out to lodges across the state for completely free. We purchase the equipment and we loan it out just to, they put in the elbow grease and it goes into the digital archives. Typically what we use in there is the Caesar digital scanners. They're overhead scanners, so they don't tear up the books, because there's two different ways that most historical societies will do those. Overhead being one. The other one, more common, is, and it's a debated term, I call it destructive scanning, because they actually deconstruct the book, remove the spine, and feed scan those. I don't like that. I just like to preserve both if possible. So these Caesar products are fantastic because they're overhead, and they either come with, you mouse click or a foot pedal. Simply flip the page, click, flip, click. You can get through a large size minute book in like 30 minutes. Click one button, puts it all into a PDF, OCRs it at the same time, and you have content searchable documents there to go through. So something amazing. They're fairly cheap on like Amazon. I think the Caesar Shine is what we use in most of those kits. It's the folding version. They have higher definition ones available that are like $500. I think the Caesar Shine one's under $200 for this type of stuff. And we've had, people that run societies that, do this stuff professionally say it's not good enough. When you're risking losing it forever, it's good enough. If you have the money and the time, for God's sake, yes, send it to a museum society that's going to do it in 10 million, DPI. That's fantastic. If you're just a regular person like most of us and you just want to save it before it's gone, if all you got your cell phone, for God's sake, pull your cell phone out. If you can afford a scanner, do it. It saves a bit of time. When I first started doing, I was sitting down on my couch and I had a whole minute book and I was literally just with my phone, click, flip, click. Then you've got, 1,400 PNG images that you got.
The big file
becomes a pain, and scanners like the Caesar become nice because you just all in one file click and it does everything. But do something to save that history today, because you never know when it's going to mold and rot away, when that ink is just going to disappear from the page, when those books go missing. It happens all the time. Preserve that information while we can.
But my advice for people who want to do that, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You don't have to. I did it for once every week or 2 weeks, sometimes twice over the course, depending on when I had meetings that way, over the course of like 7 months. And this is 238 years worth of minutes. This is like probably more minutes than most lodges are going to have to go through. And I finished it in a few months. It's in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't take that much time once you start getting into it. So if it seems like an indomitable task, the best thing to do is to just start doing it, and you'll find it actually goes pretty quickly.
That's fantastic, man. Kudos for getting that done. So many of our lodges out there are just slipping away. I can't tell you how many times we've seen, a lodge consolidate, et cetera, or just, plain shut down. And the name and just for like a decade or two, and then everything's just gone. It's just a list in a newspaper article somewhere of the name of the lodge, but all the history is gone. Preserve it while we can. You never know when you're going to be able to connect those dots. A cool thing I would like to see nationally, internationally, that we're working on here in Kansas with those kits, like when they scan that stuff in, it goes into our digital archive. The nice thing about it is not only can you go minute book by minute book in content search, do the Control F and search, for keyword phrase, but you're able to search by folder, by directory. So start to think about it when you've got all the lodges in Kansas scanned in, instead of just searching your lodge. And we find that guy on the wall, McClintock, who we never knew who he was for years. We type that name in. Oh, wow, look, I've got stuff about him over at this lodge and over at this lodge. Think about that. If we can do it across the United States, internationally, all those dots in Masonic history that we can connect that we were never able to connect before. So many untold stories, so many untold explanations are out there waiting to be discovered. They're all written down. We just got to put the puzzle together. So there's so much work there. Not one of us can do it all. We need each of you at each of your lodges to dive in and save that history, highlight that history, and tell that story again. It's been told before and it's been forgotten. Tell that story again. So, Brother Matthew, thank you so much for all you're doing for the history in your entire area, but especially with your lodge there. That's amazing stuff, man.
Yeah, well, honestly, it's a hobby, but it also it's also something that something that I really enjoy, and and I find these little stories, and then I get to share them with people who tour the lodge, and it expands our ability to talk to potential donors about cool stuff that's happening, and cool stuff that's happened in the lodge, and it makes for more entertaining tours. Right. Tour guiding is a bit of an art. And so if you have all these anecdotes to sort of just pull off of and, tell like, oh yeah, we had this big fire, we're trying to figure out how to pay. At the same time, they asked us for this money for this portrait of George Washington. Masons will find that probably funnier than the general public, but
that's fantastic stuff, man. I want to give you a chance. Anything that we've missed out on tonight worth throwing in?
Yes. Number one, have you ever heard of the show The Unexplained with William Shatner?
I have.
June 20th or 22nd, they're doing an episode on secret societies of America. Freemasonry is one of them, and Masons Hall we have a bunch of footage of Masons Hall that was shot a while ago. So Masons Hall's going to be on there, which is really awesome. Yeah. As I mentioned before, we've got the 501, the separate 501c3 nonprofit, no commingling. The lodge doesn't see this money. The money goes to preservation and the building. We see ourselves as the stewards of this building for the larger Masonic community, not just trying to save our clubhouse. It's a museum, and we treat it as that. We're open to the public. Traveling brothers come through, and I'll tell you, it's probably one of the coolest things about being a member of this lodge. And it's really cool. You step into it and it just feels historic. It feels different. And I felt that way the first time I visited. And you brothers visiting the lodge are always just like, wow, this look of amazement, especially at the Royal Arch Room. Royal Arch Masons flip out when they see the the structure, already there. And so it's really probably one of the biggest pleasures, just showing people this, what I would consider a national Masonic landmark. And so we've done a lot of renovate. We've had a lot of help over the past 10 years. I mentioned Historic Richmond and the Mezzanottis, a lady named Patsy Pettis, the Commonwealth chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, contributed money for a retaining wall and faux graining our front doors. We've had lots of individual Masons and non-Masons, lodges who've adopted windows. It's just a whole myriad of people and making these connections to be able to share this story. So we'd love if people went to the website, masonshall.org. Real simple one. Surprised that domain name was actually available. masonshall.org to learn more and potentially contribute to the upkeep and being able to tell the stories of this building.
That's fantastic, man. We'll get that in the show notes below as well. Definitely encourage all of you to check that out and check out the Unexplained as well. That I'm going to be watching for that, man. To see the lodge featured on that, that's pretty cool. I love it.
When the producer reached out to us, we were like, "What is this?" Then we looked it up and we're like, "Prometheus Studios. What's this? Oh, the Unexplained, Oak Island. Oh man, this is like a serious thing." So yeah, no, we were pretty jazzed. And it worked out. And we just randomly, brother Manny Pizzoa came and took this video of Mason's Hall. He's a professional videographer. and it was been up on YouTube. It's got like 100 views or something like that. And then these producers found it. And now they're using, the original footage. And so that's, basically this is Masonry beginning in the new United States. So definitely check that out.
That's fantastic, man. I really, really appreciate you taking some time out today. I want you to thank your family for letting us steal you away and pick your brain on some of this history. I feel like there's so much more we can tap into. So if you're up to it, man, I'd love to get you back on for another time. We can dig a little deeper with you.
I would be happy to do a part 2.
Fantastic. Well, brother, I want to thank you again so much for coming on. Can't wait for part 2. Until next time, everybody, make sure to check out the TV show, look for the lodge, and go check out their website as well. Till next time, keep preserving the history of Freemasonry. Take care, everybody, and have a great night.